Friends, I welcome you to my channel. Before listening to this story, I will ask you to like and subscribe. It is not difficult for you, but it is pleasant for me. And we're starting. My wife and some of my friends tell me that I'm a complete jerk. I know I can be a little inflexible at times, but an asshole? Never. When I was growing up, I was always taught to do the right thing, to be honest and ethical. Sometimes I feel like I might be too inflexible when it comes to ethics and doing the right thing. I suppose, looking back at what I did, I wasn't honest and ethical, but I admit to short-term, well, maybe not so short-term, insanity. Damn it, this admission of guilt frees hardened criminals or mitigates punishment, doesn't it? It should work for me too. Have I got your attention now? Well, let me tell you the story of how I ruined my dorky ex-boyfriend's marriage and almost ruined mine. Eddie Howell and his parents moved near my house just before I joined the Navy. His wife Janice was a year younger than us, and my wife, Janice's sister, was 3 years younger. I didn't know Eddie very well until I came home from the Navy. By that time, he had married Janice and was very happy. I met Janice once or twice before I joined the Navy, but we knew we weren't right for each other. I even took her out a couple of times when I was home on vacation before she married Eddie. I think this is where the problems between Eddie and me started. A few years after they got married, he found pictures of Janice and me in one of her photo albums. There were several photos from the time I took her dancing at the local club. It was obvious that we were having fun. You could see in the photos that we were laughing, and I was hugging her with one arm. Eddie also found some photos of me in military uniform, in which I accompanied Janice to the dance when I came on vacation. I hugged her again and she looked very happy. She was wearing a low-cut dress with a very short skirt. I still remember that dress. I liked it. Well, let's get back to our story. We had a couple of beers that night, and I have to admit that I used her before I took her home. Damn it, I was a sailor, and she probably wanted to try the product. I remember the night I picked her up. Her younger sister Roxy opened the door. Her face was blotchy and flushed. Her eyes were red, and tears were streaming from the corners. When Roxy opened the door, I smiled and said, "Hi, Roxy. Is Janice ready?" Roxy glared at me and turned away from the door. She still didn't answer me, but she called up the stairs, "Jen, your date is here." When Janice came downstairs, I was still standing in the open door. I wasn't actually invited in, and I didn't know what to do, so I just stood at the bottom of the stairs and waited. I asked Janice what Roxy's problem was. She smiled at me and said, "Oh, she's mad at me because I'm leaving tonight. I haven't done all my work, and she needs to feed some calves that I had to take care of. Mom made me promise to do all the work tomorrow to make amends, so I do not know what her problem is." That evening, I took Janice to a social dance. She specifically asked me to wear a white uniform. I have to admit that we looked really good in this photo. Damn it, I don't know how many ladies I was filming with that night. Many of my parents' friends asked me to pose with them, as well as with some other girls I knew when I was in school. I really had a lot of fun that night. I've been proposed to several times too. I was even surprised by this. 3 married ladies made it clear to me that they would be happy to receive me at home while their husband is at work. They said they wanted to show me how much they appreciated my service. I understood what kind of service they would like to appreciate. I have never visited married women, but I tried a couple of other ladies who wanted to express their appreciation. After I returned home from the Navy, I enrolled in college for the GI program. I farmed on an old house plot while I went to school and lived 45 kilometers from campus. I went to it every day. My first class was at 8 a.m., and I almost always finished before noon. Since most college students hated early classes, I didn't meet many eligible women during my college career. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, I sometimes had lab work that lasted until noon, so I met some people there, but not anyone special. In any case, between working on the farm and studying, I didn't have much time for social life due to the fact that I lived far from college. I used to go to Wheatland or Wilson's Mill to film pool nights if I didn't have to study or work on the farm. Many times in the summer I went in for lunch and played dominoes with one of the old men for an hour or two. And again, it didn't help public life too much. There were very few women who went to the billiard room, and those who did were cheaters. I was ready for a permanent woman who would be loyal. You know, I wanted to get married, not date. The few women I dated in college were just not my type. I was visiting one of the guys at the pool hall on Friday night, and he mentioned Roxy. I haven't thought about her in ages. Damn it, I didn't even think about Janice. That was before cell phones were invented. So I went to the back of the billiard room and used the pay phone to call Roxy. On the spur of the moment, I decided to ask her out on a date. To my surprise, she agreed to go on a date with me. We dated for the rest of the summer and became very close. I was falling in love with her. One evening, we couldn't decide what to do, and she asked if I would mind taking her to see her sister Janice and her husband. I didn't even hear that Janice got married until I started dating Roxy. We got to Janice's house, and I found out that she had married Eddie. He was always a wit, but not so obnoxious. He was a little sloppy and reminded me of a television actor named Eddie Haskell from the old show, Leave It to Beaver. Eddie and I got along well, and we all had fun together during this visit. After a couple of drinks, we got along really well. We got closer. I would say that we have become friends. After that, Roxy and I became quite frequent guests at her sister's house. The problem I had with asshole Eddie came about 8 years after Roxy and I got married. My solution to this problem has put me in the category of assholes for life. One day Eddie came to our house. I could tell he was angry when he came in. I asked, "What's the matter, Eddie?" Eddie came right up to my face and started screaming. "You're an asshole," he said. "I found some photos of you with my wife. I want you to keep your ass away from Janice. Do you hear me? Wow, dude. I've never been with your wife, unless you or Roxy were there with me. What's the big deal, man? You're a shitty jerk. I have pictures, and I'm telling you to fuck off right now. I've seen you hug her and flirt with her when we're together, and I don't like it. I don't want you to try to get close to her like you did before." Eddie turned and stomped out of our house. He was so angry that he burned the rubber when he left in his car. Roxy came into the living room and stood next to me while I stared through the open door. She asked, "What was all this about Janice?" "I have no idea." Eddie barged in here and said he had pictures of me and Janice, and he wanted me to stay away from her. "What do you mean when you say that he has pictures of you with Janice? What have you two been doing, Jerry?" "Nothing, Roxy. Like I said, I have no idea what Eddie is upset about at all." "That's bullshit. You told me that Eddie claimed to have pictures of you and Janice. It means that you and my sister did something to upset him." Roxy started crying and continued, "I can't believe you could do something like that to me. I especially can't believe that you could do this to my own sister." Roxy glared at me for a moment, then turned, grabbed her purse and stormed out the door. As she was leaving, Roxy screamed, "I'm going to get to the bottom of this right now. If you made love to Janice, our marriage is over." She jumped into her car and, tires squealing, also drove out of our house, driving too fast. Now I didn't know what to do. I was shocked. I had no idea where it all came from. I was madder at Roxy than I was at Eddie. He was an asshole, and I figured it would either settle down or it wouldn't. If not, it didn't bother me too much, because I would never have become his friend if we hadn't been tied in marriage. I was very worried too, but also a little angry at Roxy too. What the hell is going on? Almost 3 hours later, Roxy returned home. I was sitting in the living room drinking beer, trying to figure out how to deal with the shit that hit me today. Roxy was crying. She came and sat down next to me, and then she said, "Jerry, I'm sorry I left like that. I was scared and angry. I thought you were doing something bad to my sister. I went there to look at these photos and kill that fool if you messed with her." When I got there, Janice was sitting in the living room crying. All her old photo albums were scattered on the floor. Eddie was still not at home. I didn't even knock on the door. I just burst into the house and started yelling at her. While I was watching Janice, she was collecting photos and putting them back in her book. I saw the photos she was collecting. "Honey, these were photos from when you took her for a walk before and during school and returning on vacation from the Navy. I can't believe these were the photos that made Eddie so upset." After she told me what the fuss was about, I helped her pick up her photos, and we talked for a while. Eddie came home and was really drunk. He asked me what it was like to be married to an asshole like you. He yelled at Janice and accused her of being a treacherous fool for not telling him she was your lover. He wanted to know how often you dated her after he married her. We told him that we would never, but I don't think he really believed us. He came into their bedroom and said he'd better never catch you, otherwise it would be over. He slammed the door. After a few minutes, we looked into the room and saw that he was asleep. I tried to persuade her to come home with me. "Jerry, I was afraid he would hurt her, but she wouldn't go. Oh, Jerry, I'm so sorry I yelled at you. I just remembered how you took her somewhere before we started dating. I've loved you for many years, and you dated my sister. I really thought I hated her for it. I was so mad at you that I could barely talk to you or be in the same room with you. Eddie brought back all those memories this morning, and the pain and anger returned. I'm so sorry, honey. Although I can't believe he didn't know you'd met before. I wonder why he was so upset about those old photos. Well, now I knew why Roxy had been so rude to me back then. I think I could understand her feelings. I took her in my arms and told her that everything was fine. Honey, I love you. I feel good about Janice because she's your sister. Hell, I suppose I even like her, but there could never have been more between us. We are like oil and water, and you know it. We just don't get along very well. Roxy smiled and kissed me gently. She said, I know, honey. I love you too. Sometimes I'm so scared that I'm going to lose you. I know I'm not very pretty. Janice is beautiful and could always get any man she wanted. I used to invite guys to my house, and they would spend the whole evening flirting with Janice if she was at home. I guess I just remembered those times and lost my temper half-cocked. I'm so sorry. Well, since then, almost every time Eddie, Janice, Roxy, and I got together, Eddie teased Roxy and teased her. He always made remarks to her that they needed to be together. He told her that he could really turn her world around. If she had been a little tipsy, I would have had to stay almost on top of her to keep him from trying to feel her or catch a glimpse of her treasures. At least once or twice a month, good old Eddie would tell me, either when we talked in person or on the phone, that since I couldn't handle a man's job, he would be happy to come and take care of Roxy instead of me. In the end, I asked Roxy about it. Roxy, I said, what's this story about me not being good enough in bed anymore? If you have a problem with our lovemaking, or you want something that I'm not giving you, why didn't you talk to me about it? What the hell do you mean? Jerry, I've never told you that I don't like the way you make love to me. Where did all this come from? I know you've never told me that you don't like the way I make love to you. You've never told me that you like the way I make love to you either. You never even tell me if I'm doing something you like. How the hell do I know if you like what I'm doing to you or not? You know damn well where it came from too. I know you heard Eddie tell me that he would be willing to come and take care of you. You saw how we talked at your parents' place today. Roxy turned pale, then blushed. She put her hands to her mouth and said, Oh, shit, honey. I'm sorry. I guess I really was the reason for this, but that's not what I meant. Do you remember how that bull kicked you in the balls and you stayed in bed for a week? I was talking to Janice. I told her how glad I'd be when you got better and you could make real good love to me again. Eddie came into the kitchen and grinned at me. I told Eddie to stop and get away from me. He just grinned and said that if you couldn't do the job, he would take care of me instead of you. He said it would be fair if he did, since you were making love to Janice. Roxy, I started to say that I had never used her sister, but then I remembered that I had done it once when I was in the Navy. Shit, did this jerk know about it? Is it really Roxy? I was sitting there trying to decide what to say when Roxy smiled. She put her hand on my forearm and said, Relax, honey. I know you used Janice once when you were in the Navy. She told me about it the day I helped her with the photos. I have to admit, it hurt, but it wasn't like you were cheating on me. We weren't even dating then, but you were dating her. She also told me that this was your last date, and that's when she decided that you could never be more than just an acquaintance. She said that neither of you really liked each other either. There were no real fireworks for any of you. She knows that you annoy each other, and so do I. I do not know how he found out this. I guess Janice must have told him, or he was just ranting. I know that they made love to her while they were dating. Maybe he thinks she's done it on all her dates. I don't know. Anyway, honey, that's what he means by his chatter. And you will never have to worry about him or any other man, as long as you remain the man I fell in love with when I was 13 and you visited my older sister. I've loved you all my life, and I trust you more than I can put into words. Well, for the next few months, I'll just put up with good old Eddie's shit and try to be polite to him when fate or family matters brought us together. Eddie just didn't want to leave it alone. He kept making comments to me. I guess he got tired of messing with me verbally. He upped the ante. Good old Eddie started making more thought-provoking remarks to Roxy. From time to time, he started proposing to Roxy and touching her inappropriately. One day, at a family meeting, I got tired of it. That night, when we got home, I exploded. During my rant to Roxy about Eddie, I said, I've had enough of this asshole. I'm going to give him some of his own medicine. I'm telling you now, honey, that from now on, every time he makes a remark to me about using you, or if I even hear him say it to someone else and it gets to me, I'm going to make the same remark to him. I'm going to tell him that I'm going to visit Janice. Or at least I'm going to tell him that I'm going to see her. I'm going to let him know what it feels like when someone constantly tells him that he can't take care of his own wife. And I'm going to do it for him. I'm going to touch, or try to touch Janice the same way he touches you. This shit is going to end one way or another. Honey, I don't think this is such a good idea. You know how jealous he can be. We all know that he's just playing macho when he spews his garbage. Please don't do this. No, it's a done deal. From now on, I give as well as he does. No. And that's another problem I'm facing in all of this. You're too condescending to him when he comes up to you. I know you're not doing anything with him, but I'm really mad at you for not stopping some of his antics. For the next 5 months, every time I called Eddie and Janice at home or answered the phone, and this was one of them, I made the same inappropriate comments as Eddie. If I had talked to good old Eddie, I would have suggested that he take care of Janice. At first, he just ignored me, so I increased my efforts to give my best. A couple of times, Roxy asked me to stop touching Janice and proposing to her. Hell, even Janice asked me to stop doing things like that to her. I told her the same thing I told Roxy. I would have stopped as soon as Eddie stopped doing this to Roxy. Hell, Roxy's dad even talked to me about the inappropriate things I said to Janice. I snapped at that. I said, "Listen, Ron, I love Roxy to death. I would never cheat on her, and you know that if you know me at all. And I'm also sick of Eddie and his flirting with her." I told Roxy, Janice, and Eddie that I would stop what I was doing, and saying as soon as Eddie stopped doing the same thing to Roxy. Why didn't you say or do anything to Eddie about this? Well, son, you know, Eddie, he's just pulling your strings. What you're doing is like pouring gasoline on a fire. You need to be a big man here and stop showing Eddie that Janice really interests you. Bullshit, Dad. He started it. Roxy and I both tried to ignore it and ask him to stop before I started paying him back. When he stops and I stop, that's the whole result. He keeps his damn hands off my wife and stops putting makeup on her, and I do the same with his wife. One day we had to go to another family meeting. Eddie brought me a beer and handed it to me. I was surprised because he usually didn't act too friendly anymore. I was hoping that maybe he was ready to bury the hatchet. Then he grinned and said, "That's it, old man. You've got enough for today, and I'll give Roxy what she needed. I know she needs a real man after putting up with you for so long. It's just a matter of time before I divorce her." I saw red. I was angry. I started hitting Eddie in the face, but then I changed my mind. All I did was lean over to him and say, "Well, I'd be worried if I thought you were man enough to get into her panties, but you're not. After the last time I was with Janice, I realized why you're not satisfying her." Before I could turn the knife again, Eddie exploded. He punched me in the face and stormed off. I was still lying on the ground when he started yelling at Janice. "I've had enough of you and that jerk. I'm leaving here." Half of the family stood and watched, and the other half ran to me to see if I was okay. Of course, that's when I started to feel awkward about all this. I wondered if I had gone too far. Needless to say, it ruined the party. Roxy was so mad at me. She really helped me up, but when she found out what the cause of the problem was, she attacked me. She had never yelled at me like that before. It was completely quiet on the way home. We visited her parents, and she insisted that we take Janice to her house. No one said a word during the entire 30-minute drive. Roxy spent the night on the couch and didn't even speak to me when she served me breakfast the next morning. I am engaged in agriculture, so when I came to the house for lunch, I was again faced with silent treatment. The only time she spoke to me first was absolutely necessary for the next 3 days. Unless something I told her needed an answer, Roxy never answered when I told her something. On Thursday, I came home for lunch, and Roxy had already left. I made a sandwich and went back to the field to work. That evening, I returned home to a dark house. Roxy was still missing. I called her parents to see if they knew where she was. Her mother said, "Both girls are here. How could you do this to them, Jerry? Roxy doesn't want to talk to you. Please just leave us alone." I started going to the Old Mill Cafe on Wilson's Mill for breakfast and dinner. Of course, in the first few days when I came here, there was a lot of banter. Eddie filed for divorce from Janice for adultery, citing the fact that I was her lover. He and Roxy were living with their parents again. Half the guys thought it was a great joke that I was another man and never even touched Janice's skin after she got married. The other half of the men thought that I dipped the fuse into Janice and got caught. Most women were disgusted with me for cheating on Roxy with her sister, or angry because of the joke I played with Eddie. It seems like those who were on my side were the ones who heard what he said to me and Roxy about taking care of her since I couldn't. They considered my actions justified. Those who were upset with me thought that what I had done was terrible. I ruined a good marriage and deserved to suffer. Some people thought Roxy should divorce me for being an asshole. Others thought that she should divorce me because they were sure that I really cheated on her with her sister. It was almost a month before Roxy returned to my house. We had a hard time the rest of the summer because I was such an asshole to poor old Eddie. Eddie and Janice did get divorced, and she raped him in the settlement. He would never be able to provide any evidence that I was doing anything inappropriate with Janice. All he had were a couple of friends who testified that I repeatedly told him that I was going to come and take care of her because he wasn't manly enough. Of course, Janice presented documents and witnesses saying that he did the same thing to me. Janice also provided evidence of how Eddie behaved towards her. She got a divorce from Eddie for his mental cruelty towards her. The judge was upset about both of us men. We both got a royal beating in court for being such assholes. Now, a year after the divorce, Janice is enjoying her life again. I'm at a family meeting again, and I can't believe what I'm hearing. Janice is talking in the kitchen with Roxy, her mother, and another sister. I never thought I'd be happy again when Eddie kicked me out, but I have to admit that last year was almost perfect. I didn't realize how much his damn flirting with other women and complaining about me dating Jerry bothered me. It was a real paradise not to listen to his nonsense day after day. I was so upset when Jerry did what he did that I never thought maybe Eddie deserved it. I was just laughing at what Eddie said to you, Roxy, because Eddie is Eddie. Roxy, I'm so sorry that I let him put you through all this. I was mad at Jerry for the way he was acting because he went out of his way to break the chain with Eddie, but now I really think I'm better off than when I was married to Eddie. Money is a little tight, but I'm happy now. Jerry and I still don't like each other, and I'll never be really close to him. Honey, but it's time for you to forget about it and try to fix your marriage too, Roxy. Jerry loves you to death, but can't you see, honey? You're doing to Jerry what Eddie did to me, only in a different way. You need to come to terms with what he did and said to Eddie and work on making him happy, otherwise you'll end up getting divorced too. Considering how much you've always loved this man, I can't believe it would be good for you. Roxy was crying, and I heard her say through her sobs, I know, but he was such an asshole about it. I just can't accept that he kept bullying Eddie, even when I told him he needed to forget about it. Didn't you tell me that he said he'd stop when Eddie did? Honey, he couldn't fight Eddie. We were a family. You know how everyone would treat him if he started a fight with Eddie. He did his best to protect you from Eddie's moronic remarks. I know it hurt in the end, and I know I was mad at him for bothering me, but he didn't do anything Eddie wouldn't do to you. If it comes to that, Roxy, why didn't you lash out at Eddie for saying and doing things like that to you? I do not know, Janice. Probably because I kind of enjoyed it. I didn't like it, but I felt good knowing that Eddie kind of wanted me. I would never have let it go any further, but to be honest, his words didn't hurt me the way Jerry did. So, here it is, friends. That's how I came to be thought of as an asshole, and how I almost lost my marriage to an asshole ex-boyfriend. Do I regret doing this? No, not really. I'm tired of this shitty mouth. I'm sorry that I upset Roxy and ruined my marriage a little bit. I guess I even feel a little sorry for Janice, but to be honest, she's not too dear to me, so what the hell? If she wasn't my wife's sister, I wouldn't care. I'm still a little mad at Roxy for her part in all this, but Janice is right about what she said. We love each other to death, and we need to heal this wound before it gets so serious that we can't. If Roxy doesn't take the right steps soon, I guess I'll have to try to find a way back for both of us. I'd really like to go back to where we were before Eddie the asshole started stirring the pot. End.